Yeah, I thought that it impacted us in that next game. I thought the combination of the two overtime games together impacted us more than the one game. Either one game would have. I can't remember if I said this when it happened, but watching our away game at Arizona after we lost that Stanford game was tremendous effort by the guys to try and get one on the road, and then you lose that one in overtime. That, I think, had an effect on us when we went to Arizona State. So I think that had an effect on those three games. Then after that, like this team does, they bounce back, and, we've had some successes. So I don't think it's been, we've been hungover, to use a word you guys like to use, since then. No.
Do you sense a revenge factor for this game?
Our guys don't operate like that. They don't operate on revenge. They operate on wanting to win, first and foremost. Secondly, they're starting to work at wanting to be really good at their craft. We've been talking about that with the guys, and the problem with playing for revenge is that you get up for revenge's sake and you end up not executing correctly. I like the way our guys are going about their business, and I really liked how we executed in the Washington game. The Washington State game, you take that one out, you take Colorado out. It was just, two games there. But for the most part, I like the way these guys go about their business. It's very workmanlike. And I think when you're workmanlike, you don't have to worry about things like revenge or emotions or senior days or anything like that.
What did you think of the after effects of the switching of the lineup for Saturday? The three-guard rotation.
I liked it. I liked it for what we needed. I think with this team, I've said all year long, that we have 7 or 8 guys who could probably start. And depending on what the matchups are, we can go with a number of lineups. And I thought that the 3-guard lineup might give us a little bit less of a disadvantage against their 3-guard lineup. And I thought Charlie did a good job, even though he got in foul trouble. I thought he was out there playing tough and sort of helped us set a tone on defense. So will we see that again? It really just depends on what we need game to game.
Talk about what you've seen from Charlie over the course of this year.
I've seen a lot of growth from him. Typically the international guys are more mature off the court. On the court, they're just like guys who are inexperienced. They come in like freshmen. So he's been able to really ramp up his learning curve just from knowing how to be a professional. And he comes to work every day. What I see from him is a growth in confidence, a growth in actual basketball skills, and most importantly, a growth in leadership. I think he might be one of those guys who will eventually evolve as one of our more vocal leaders.
When did you start seeing that this year? Is that something he came in and did right away?
No, as a freshman, it's hard to kind of get that thing going. But of late, sort of maybe the second half, a little bit into the first half, beginning of the second half of the season, he's been a lot more vocal, a lot more. He's starting to understand things better, so he's more confident in giving advice to other guys.
How important is it going to be for you to get production out of Joe Burton on this trip?
It's important, and Joe had a rough couple of weeks, or a rough week last week, and it's hard for us to do well if our front court doesn't do well, and Joe's a big part of that front court. He really helps us facilitate our offense. And when he can help facilitate as well as score a few buckets, typically we win. It's going to be important for us going forward and in the tournament to get him back to the production level he was at sort of in the beginning and middle part of the season.
Do you still think it's fatigue with
I think his body is sore. Joe's body takes a real beating just from the size of it and the pounding he takes, and he is not afraid to throw his body around on the court. And, if you think about 280-plus pounds hitting the ground a few times a game, trying to take charges, blocking out guys who are bigger than he is, it's a lot of pounding. And that's irrespective of just the pounding of running around with that kind of weight and the jumping and the pounding his body takes. I think fatigue is part of it.
Do you feel like teams are playing Jarrett a little more physical now? I mean, he kind of really took a beating against Washington.
I do. I think they have to. I think that's a way to slow Jarrett down. And I've said this before. Just because he shoots a lot of foul shots doesn't mean he doesn't get fouled. So you can't not call it because you think you've called too many. I think Jarrett, if you look at any of our tapes, in the conference games, teams have tried to bump him when he cuts, and they've tried to, knock him off his line when he's going to the basket. I mean, it's just I do think that, but Jarrett's got to play through it, and I thought he did a good job on Sunday of not being frustrated. He didn't sometimes he gets frustrated when he doesn't get a call, but he just keeps coming back. He just kept coming back in that game on Sunday.
You mentioned before, that you're kind of surprised because he's become a marquee player that sometimes he doesn't get these calls. What can he do, or is there anything he can do?
I don't think there's anything he can do. There's the only thing that can be done is what I can do it, and I have to make the refs aware of the fact that, he can get bumped every single time he goes to the basket, and he should be called. He should be on the foul line every single time. There's no got to the amount of fouls you get, So, but it's part of the game, You got to play through it.
He's got so many eyes on him with the better, as he's gotten better over the course of the year, and yet continues to even raise the level of his game even more. Does that surprise you at all?
No, Jarrett. Some of you guys weren't around when Jarrett was here as a freshman, but Jarrett was a scrawny little freshman who could dunk the basketball, and he couldn't dunk as powerfully as he can now. And he has taken that slim, sort of chiseled but not that strong body and turned himself into a potential pro with his work. I mean, he has worked on his jump shot. He has worked on his three-point sort of set shot. He's worked on getting to the basket without running guys over. He has worked on his pull-up jump shot. He's worked on his ball handling. He has worked on his passing. So whenever you take and I keep using this term, when you take your craft that seriously, you get better. And that's what you're seeing. So he can keep getting better as the season goes on. So it doesn't surprise me.
How aware is he? Does he know about how many NBA scouts?
I don't know how he could not in this day and age of social media. But he does not let that affect him. If there's anybody who could ignore it, or I'll put it this way, I doubt if he's ignoring it because he is a student of the game. So he's well aware of what everybody's talking about, but he's able to compartmentalize that over here until it's time to deal with it. I like that about Jarrett. I think that shows a quality of focus and in some ways a quality of leadership. I mean, he's not a real vocal guy, but he's also he's treating his teammates as if he's in the soup with them every day, in the fight with them every day, like he's one of the infantrymen. He's not like, he's not turning into a prima donna or anything like that.
Despite the last two games, how much do you think your recent road success will help you guys heading into the Bay Area?
I'd like to think that it's going to help us. I think irrespective of our record, I think we're playing better, and I think we're playing better on the road, and I think our confidence is back to the level where it was when we were in the non-conference. But it has to play out that way. If it doesn't play out, I'll be wrong, and then I'll be, then you guys will be asking me, you think it's, the other way, and I might have to examine that. But my gut feeling, and you guys, I guess, have gotten to know me, I'm a pretty straight shooter. If I didn't think these guys were working hard enough, I'd tell you that. These guys are just inexperienced, and each game we get a little bit more experience. And I just absolutely love the way we're getting to the point where we know how to follow a game plan and execute it like a veteran team. That's just I'm seeing signs of maturity that I think are gonna they're gonna bear fruit here at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Of all the Pac-12 road trips, where does the Bay Area rank in terms of difficulty?
Oh man, it depends on who's playing well at the time. I think they're all hard. There are no easy road trips. I think this one is going to be one of the harder ones because you've got two teams who are both in front of us in the standings. Stanford, their record of late doesn't show it, but they're still a tough team, and they beat us, so they're going to have that confidence of having beaten us. And Cal, they're just so well coached, so well at executing their game plan that they rarely beat themselves. You have to beat them in order to win, and that's doubly hard when you're on the road.
How much do the games change from the first time around to the second time around?
It depends on the teams because I know I feel like I think Cal and Stanford have a way they want to play, and it's going to be very consistent both ways. And then there might be some other teams that try and do some things to change it up after the first time. But I think the talent is such that, and the coaching is such that there are not many guys who will change up their game plan. They believe in what they do. The players believe in what they do, and if they went away from that, they'd be risking diluting their efforts and giving the opponent a chance to kind of sneak in there. So I don't think it'll be too much of a change in game plan. There might be a change in lineup, but not game plan.
Does the fact that the first time you played Stanford, it was such an epic game, have an impact in this one?
We'll see. I mean, what I'm looking for from our team is the same effort and game plan that I saw on Sunday. Then we'll worry about what they're doing and if they're doing anything different, going back to your other question, or if it's going to be a knockdown drag out like last time. I suspect that it's I would hope that it'd be a knockdown drag out. I mean, that means we're in the game for the entire game, unless we can, win going away like everybody wants to do. But that's hard to do on the road.
Angus feels better about his game now after Sunday's game.
I hope he does because he was for lack of a better term, he was in a slump solely induced by his own confidence. He sort of regressed back to the old Angus, and I said to him, I was like, just relax and have fun like you were doing at the beginning of the season. You make the right decisions. You know how to play this game. Just relax. And he did and went out and had a great game. So can he continue that? He should be able to. I mean, I'm hoping so.
So as an Ivy Leaguer, what do you think of Jeremy Lin?
I couldn't be more excited about Jeremy Lin. I mean, I cannot believe anybody would say anything negative about this whole situation. And you guys know I coached against Jeremy Lin for two of his years at Harvard. And I had an assistant coach, Isaac Willis, who was a volunteer assistant. In the Ivy League, you have two assistants and one volunteer assistant. He was the first person I heard say, the very first person I heard say that kid's going to be a pro. He said it. And when he said it, I was like, get out of here. He's a small Ivy League guy. He's athletic, but he wasn't doing a whole lot. I don't even think he was Ivy League Player of the Year. He might have been first team, but the kid really could play. But I didn't think he was going to be a pro. And I have had an opportunity to watch a couple of games because everybody's been talking about it, parts of games, and he's really a good player, a good NBA player. And it's interesting because you guys probably know this as much as I do. Sometimes a college guy's game doesn't translate well in college. It translates better in the pros. It's just rarely an Ivy League guy. It's rarely an Ivy League guy. And I love everything about the story, the stick-to-itiveness, the battling against obstacles, the not feeling sorry for yourself, not listening to people tell you can't do it. The fact that he's Asian American is just even sweeter because it just shows what can happen in this country. I love absolutely everything about it. I mean, the fact that he's a kid who was an economics major at Harvard makes all of us Ivy Leaguers proud. You know, all of us Ivy League basketball players proud. And, you know, it's hard as a Princeton guy to say anything good about a Harvard guy. But I couldn't be happier for that kid, and I'm rooting for him. And I just hope when Carmelo comes back, he realizes what he's got. And it'll be interesting. It'll be a good litmus test to see if they can continue winning when the good players come back. No offense to the guys who are playing now.
Seems like you got Linsanity then.
I don't have Linsanity because that's overused. But this is very interesting.
Have you ever seen a scenario in coaching where someone is sitting and then they just explode?
Yeah, that happens a lot because different situations, especially in the professional ranks, you know, it's once you get slotted, sometimes you're at the end of the bench and you don't get an opportunity until somebody gets hurt or somebody gets traded, and then all of a sudden everybody sees this kid is good. A good example of that is a kid from Georgia Tech, who I saw play at 5-star, Anthony Solomon, or he plays for the Golden State Warriors. I want to say his last name is Solomon. I can't remember his name. And he was like a skinny 6'5" kid who grew to be 6'7", went to Georgia Tech and was an okay player and was either a second-round pick or an undrafted guy. He's like starting now in the NBA. And the other thing to that is that different guys get better at different times. So everybody's going in these different, and if you hit right when the opportunity's there, you can see that. So I bet if you looked back, there are a lot of guys that you didn't know about in college who are making a name for themselves as pros.
You guys are just one of 3 teams to beat Cal so far this season. What did you like about the match the first time and going into it again this weekend? You know,
historically, since I've been here, we've had good matchups with them. I don't know what it is other than that. We always seem to be a little bit longer than they are. But even before we were playing this way, when we were playing sort of a more plodding way, I'll use that word, we had some success. And, you know, it's interesting about confidence and attitude. When you think you can beat somebody, it gives you a little bit of a boost. So I think first and foremost, we have the confidence because we have a history of having beaten those guys. Secondly, I think we match up well with them, even though they have good players. What we do on defense matches up with what they do on offense, and if you can keep those guys from, if you can keep a guy like Crabbe from hitting 4 threes on you, that helps you. And if you can match Gutierrez's intensity, because he makes a lot of great plays. It's not always scoring plays either. It's defensive plays. It's passing plays. It's rebound. It's just basketball plays. Kind of like what I was talking about after the game on Sunday. If you can make more or as many basketball plays as your opponent, you have an advantage. So we've been fortunate to make plays to keep up with him because we're focused on that. We know how good he is. So I think those couple of things have helped us. But it's still on the road. You know, we have to play a perfect game to win on the road, especially there.
When you're talking about Gutierrez, you say he makes plays. What are some of the things that he seems like a relentless player, like who's going to be working when no one else is paying attention? What are some of the things that make him so good?
I think that he really is first and foremost a good player. You don't sort of hear about him because he's not the big-time scorer on that team, and he hasn't been because he's always had prolific scorers going back. You know, Randall he played with, Jerome Randall, and then he played with Patrick Christopher and the other kid who could shoot, who's on their staff now, Theo Robertson. So he hasn't had to be a scorer, but I think he can. I think, you know, he's had games in the 20s. He probably score 30 if he needed to. But he does other things. He's runs that team. He's a great leader. He gets steals and stops and blocks. It's not just defense. He does everything on defense. Rebounds. He's an all-around player. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the type of guy you see on an NBA roster because he may not get drafted, but he'll go to camp. He'll do everything. He'll be able to guard the guys. He's athletic enough. He'll have he'll have a great off-the-court presence. He's just a very good player. Probably first team in our league if I had to vote right now.
Do you think he's a better defender than Jared, or do you think they're two different?
They're two different kind of defenders, and it would be hard for me to say anybody can defend better than Jared. I mean, Jared can guard a point guard, a two guard, and now when we played that 3-guard lineup, he was guarding tall or small forwards. And I just haven't seen anybody with the lateral quickness that Jared has. I mean, he is really good keeping guys in front of him no matter how fast they are. But I'd put them both on the all-defensive team. Anything else?
Do you remember who your first Valentine was?
Oh, yes, I do.
Can you get a name drop?
Only because I don't remember her last name. I won't name drop it, but I remember it. I remember giving my first Valentine. I was like shaking when I gave it to her. Second grade. Second grade. Rhonda something. I can't remember her last name, but yeah. And you guys all heard that Kelly had a baby. We had a baby last night.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Baby's name?
Aaron Lamar Robinson. 8 pounds, 11 ounces, 20 inches at 8:23 last night.
Damn. It's a big kid.
Yes, bigger than Austin.
Oh, gosh.
Bigger than Avery and Leslie, too. AARON.
How's Kelly doing?
Fine. Yeah, she's fine.
Why are you here?
Practice. Still got to win games. So I'm driving back up to Vancouver, and then I'll be back down for practice tomorrow, and then we'll head out of town.
Tough time to go on the road, huh?
It is, but fortunately, we were thinking that Sunday would be the day, so her parents are coming in. They'll pick her up from the hospital, and my older daughter's around, and we have babysitters for Austin, so we're covered. Yeah, it's exciting.